At 58, I went from performing complex surgeries in a sterile, brightly lit operating room to driving strangers through the cracked streets of Hartford in a rusted Honda Civic that coughed and sputtered every few miles. Just 3 years earlier, I had been the chief of orthopedic surgery at Hartford Medical Center, respected, envied, and comfortable in a life built on precision, discipline, and pride. My mornings began with espresso in crystal cups, the soft hum of classical music drifting through marble hallways, and a view from my office that reminded me I had made it further than I ever dreamed possible. I had a wife with an Ivy League education, a $4.7 million home in West Hartford, and a reputation that carried weight in every hospital corridor I walked. My name is Richard Hale, and this is how everything I built, every ounce of dignity, status, and respect, was torn away, not by scandal, not by failure, but by one man, Judge Leonard Whitmore, my father-in-law, and the most powerful figure in Connecticut's legal system. When I first met Leonard, he seemed almost larger than life, a man whose very silence demanded attention, whose handshake carried the weight of consequence. My wife, Catherine, idolized him. She was Yale-bred, polished, brilliant, and driven, a mirror of his ambition and control. She had inherited his sharpness, his composure, even his ability to disguise anger behind a polite smile. From the beginning, Leonard saw me as an outsider, a surgeon from a middle-class Boston family who had somehow crossed into his kingdom. I can still remember his toast at our wedding, how his voice was smooth but cold, his words a carefully veiled warning disguised as approval. For years, I tried to win him over. I joined his country club, made contributions to his political causes, invited him to cut the ribbon at the opening of my new surgical center. Every move I made was an olive branch, every smile an attempt to bridge the chasm between us. But Leonard Whitmore was a man who didn't forgive intrusions into his power. He didn't want a son-in-law. He wanted control over every person within reach of his influence. And for a while, I convinced myself I could manage him, that I could coexist with his arrogance and keep my family safe within the fragile peace that Catherine maintained between us. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was a Friday evening in late October, the kind where the air tastes faintly of smoke and the city glows gold under the fading sunlight. I had just finished a 12-hour shift, the kind of day that leaves your back aching and your mind numb from focus. My last patient, a young athlete with a fractured spine, had thanked me through tears, and as I looked out at the skyline from my office window, I felt a quiet satisfaction. I was tired but proud. Life, I thought, was stable, predictable, safe. When I got home, the lights were dim. The fire crackled softly in the living room, and Catherine was sitting in her chair, a glass of wine in one hand, a stack of papers in the other. Her posture was too still, her eyes fixed on me in a way that made the air feel heavy. "You didn't think I'd find out, did you?" she said quietly. Her tone wasn't angry. It was calm, surgical, like she was cutting open a wound she already knew existed. I didn't understand. My mind scrambled for context. Then she slid the papers across the coffee table. Divorce papers. Attached were printed emails, photographs, and a sworn statement from one of my surgical nurses, all of it detailing an affair I never had. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I just stared at the documents, at the blurred photos that looked enough like me to be convincing. And then, as if on cue, the front door opened. Leonard Whitmore stepped inside, still wearing his trench coat, the smell of his cigar clinging to him like smoke to an old wall. "I warned you once, Richard," he said, his voice calm, almost gentle. He set a manila folder on the coffee table beside the papers. "You should have listened." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything: triumph, control, and quiet satisfaction. Inside the folder were more of the same: photographs, fabricated emails, and an affidavit so detailed it could have fooled the most skeptical investigator. I remember my throat going dry, my pulse pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. Catherine looked at me like I was a stranger, like she was seeing a ghost of the man she'd married. That night, when I tried to speak to her, she didn't raise her voice. She just said, "You've humiliated this family enough," and walked upstairs. I heard the door close softly, and in that sound, something inside me fractured. By the end of that week, the hospital had launched an internal investigation. A month later, I was suspended pending review. Every colleague I'd once mentored suddenly avoided me in the hallways. I'd walk into a room and feel the conversation stop. I told myself the truth would win out, that the hospital board would see through the lies. But I underestimated Leonard Whitmore's reach. Then came the second blow, a federal warrant. Agents showed up at my office one morning with paperwork accusing me of insurance fraud. Someone had used my digital credentials to approve inflated patient claims. A meticulous setup complete with matching timestamps, IP addresses, and log trails. I tried to explain, to show them the inconsistencies, but to them, I was just another corrupt doctor. Over the next 6 months, I fought to clear my name. I hired the best attorneys money could buy, but every one of them dropped my case within days. One even returned my retainer without explanation. Every door I knocked on closed in my face. And every time I tried to reach Catherine, her father's aides intercepted my calls. I didn't even get the chance to defend myself to the woman I loved. By the time the case concluded, I was bankrupt. My medical license revoked. My home seized to pay restitution. My reputation shredded in the press. Colleagues I considered friends stopped returning my messages. Invitations vanished. Even my name was erased from the hospital's board listing. I remember the day the movers came, strangers boxing up my life, wrapping my diplomas in bubble wrap, and stacking my awards like meaningless clutter. The house echoed as they carried everything out. The marble floors, once polished and proud, were cold against my bare feet. I stood there, watching fragments of a 20-year career reduced to cardboard and tape. After the movers left, I wandered the empty rooms. The air smelled of dust and loss. In our old bedroom, I found one of Catherine's silk scarves tangled in a drawer. It still carried her perfume, faint, expensive, distant. I sat on the floor for an hour, holding it like it could explain something, like it might speak if I waited long enough. A year later, I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in New Haven. The rent was cheap, the walls thin, and the silence unbearable. I started driving Uber to survive. It was humiliating at first, but eventually I told myself it was just temporary. When passengers asked what I used to do, I'd say, I'm semi-retired, because saying I'd been destroyed by my father-in-law didn't fit neatly into small talk. Every night, I'd drive through the same streets I once passed in my luxury sedan, hospital parking lots, neighborhoods I used to visit for fundraisers, restaurants where I once hosted donors. I'd look at the world I used to belong to and feel like a ghost haunting my own past. Sometimes, when I picked up late-night passengers from the hospital, I'd watch them walk through those same glass doors I once entered daily. Young doctors in clean coats, nurses laughing over coffee, security guards I used to greet by name. No one recognized me anymore, and maybe there was mercy. Then, one night, something shifted. It was late, past midnight. My phone pinged with a new ride request. Pickup, the Hartford Club, the same elite venue where Leonard hosted his annual charity gala. I hesitated, then accepted. When I pulled up, I recognized the man leaning against the brick wall, phone in hand, tie loosened, Andrew Fisk, one of Leonard's personal aides. He stumbled into the back seat, clearly drunk, muttering to someone on the other end of the line. At first, I wasn't paying attention. I just wanted to finish the ride, collect the fare, and go home. But then his words sliced through the quiet. Yeah, the old man had his tech guys fake the emails he slurred. Said it'd take care of the surgeon problem. Catherine never even knew. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. My hands tightened around the steering wheel, my pulse spiking. I didn't dare speak. I just drove, careful, slow, letting him ramble. My phone, sitting quietly in the cup holder, was recording the entire conversation. When I dropped him off, he thanked me with a sloppy grin and stumbled toward his apartment. I sat in the car long after he disappeared inside, staring at the glowing screen, replaying the recording again and again. The words were clear. Proof. After years of ruin and silence, proof that I had been framed. The next morning, I sent the audio file to one person I knew I could trust, Laura Mendez, an investigative journalist I'd met years earlier through the hospital's charity program. She was relentless, principled, and one of the few who had treated me with dignity when the scandal broke. I didn't attach my name to the message, just a file and a short note. This man destroyed my life. Do what you do best. A week later, the headlines hit every major outlet. Judge Leonard Whitmore implicated in fabricated evidence scheme. Leaked audio reveals judicial corruption at state level. The story spread like wildfire. Federal investigators reopened old cases. The courthouse steps filled with reporters. Within days, Leonard's carefully crafted empire began to crumble. He resigned for personal reasons under public pressure. The FBI raided his office, seizing computers and files. His allies distanced themselves. The same people who once toasted his brilliance now whispered about his arrogance. Catherine fled to Europe, avoiding cameras and questions. I didn't hear from her again. Maybe she believed the truth. Maybe she didn't. I'll never know. When I saw Leonard's face flash across the evening news, pale and shaken for the first time, I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vindicated. Just emptiness. The kind that comes when a fire you've been feeding for years finally burns out, leaving only ash behind. People reached out. Journalists wanted interviews. Publishers offered book deals. A podcast host even pitched a series about the surgeon who exposed the judge. I declined them all. Fame built on pain isn't redemption. It's just another form of exploitation. So I disappeared. Quietly. Now, I live on the outskirts of Hartford, in a modest house with a small garden and no marble floors. I still drive sometimes, though not because I need the money, just out of habit, out of the faint comfort that comes with movement. My hands, once steady enough to repair shattered bones and align fractured spines, now tremble when I shift gears. There are nights I drive past the hospital, the one that once carried my name on the surgical board. The lights still burn bright in the upper floors. I sometimes imagine the younger version of myself inside. Confident, steady, certain that the world was fair. I envy him. Revenge didn't give me back my career. It didn't rebuild my marriage. It didn't erase the humiliation of watching everything I love collapse. But it gave me something else, something quieter, heavier, and truer. It gave me my name back. People sometimes ask if I regret it, if I'd still expose Leonard knowing what it would cost me. The answer has never changed. Yes, because some things are worth losing everything for. Honor, truth, the sound of your own conscience when you sleep at night. The world doesn't remember men like me, the ones who fall quietly after the headlines fade. But I made my peace with that. The name Richard Hale might not appear on hospital plaques or lecture schedules anymore, but it's still mine. And no one, not even the most powerful judge in Connecticut, can take that away again. On quiet evenings, when the sun dips behind the trees and the city hum fades into the distance, I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee, not espresso, just coffee, and watch the light shift across the fields. Sometimes I think about Catherine, about whether she ever learned the truth. Sometimes I think about Leonard, sitting alone somewhere, stripped of his titles, his influence, his arrogance. I wonder if he ever felt remorse. But mostly I just breathe. The bitterness has dulled over time. The anger that once fueled me has turned into something else. Not peace exactly, but acceptance. I learned that power doesn't just corrupt those who wield it. It destroys those who orbit it, hoping for approval that never comes. My life now is simple, quiet, honest. I fix small things around the house. I tend to my garden. I sometimes volunteer at a free clinic downtown, teaching young interns how to suture. They don't know who I am, to them. I'm just another aging man with stories. And that's enough. Though my hands no longer heal bodies, I've found a strange kind of healing in solitude, in driving through familiar streets, in small conversations with strangers who don't know who I used to be, in knowing that somewhere out there, the truth finally won. Sometimes I drive past the courthouse, and I can almost hear Leonard's voice echoing in my memory. You should have listened. Maybe he was right, but not in the way he thought. Because I did listen. I listened to my conscience, to the voice that refused to let me die branded as a fraud. And that's why, when people ask if I do it all again, I don't hesitate. Yes, every time. Because when everything else is stripped away, titles, wealth, pride, all that's left is your name. and I saved mine. That I'll carry with me to the end. You just heard a story of betrayal, survival, and quiet revenge. If it left you thinking, hit like, share it forward, and subscribe for more true, emotional stories that'll stay with you long after they end. Every click helps another story find its voice.